Vice President Harris, I believe that you are now on the telephone fresh off of that briefing that we all saw here on CNN. Thank you so much for being here. What is the most important thing that you learned that you want to amplify for Americans who are in the path of this dangerous storm right now?
The briefing was very helpful on a number of fronts, but most importantly in getting the word out to folks in Florida in particular to please heed the advice and direction of your local officials, because this storm is unlike anything we have seen before, and that's the point of emphasis. This is unlike anything we have seen before. We got a lot of tough, strong people in Florida who have been through a lot of hurricanes, tornadoes, but this is not like anything they've dealt with before. So if they have been told to evacuate, they must evacuate. We expect that this is going to be catastrophic and deadly. And I would emphasize that. I would also emphasize the information that we received, that even if the designation of the category shifts from a 5 to 4, that's not actually a downgrade in terms of the danger and the dangerous potential of it. And so let's not have people rely to their detriment on, oh, this sounds like it's going to be less serious than we thought. They made very clear Category 5, Category 4 are almost equivalent in terms of the danger and the damage that they will create. So I would urge people to really take that information away, as well as to know there are dedicated folks on the ground from FEMA, from federal, state, and local agencies that are there to help you in terms of advice now, to help you get out, and to help with recovery and rebuilding after this storm and this hurricane passes.
And Madam Vice President, I just want to follow up on the FEMA readiness part of this discussion. We heard the Administrator Deanne Criswell say earlier today that the agency is down to $11 billion in disaster relief funding because it spent about $9 billion just over the last week. Are you confident FEMA has the resources to manage what we are, never mind what we're about to see in Florida, but of course, that's on top of Hurricane Helene 2 weeks ago?
FEMA absolutely has the resources that it needs now and to deal with this hurricane as it hits and the aftermath. And of course, we want Congress, when they come back, to do their job of making sure that they pass legislation to provide more aid, because again, this is really historic in terms of what we've seen. And so we do need to buff up the aid and assistance that we give FEMA, understanding that this is unusual and may be, sadly, the new normal.
But you don't believe that, because Congress is not in Washington right now, you don't believe that they need to come back earlier in order to give FEMA more resources?
FEMA has what they need right now.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about what both you and President Biden talked about in this briefing, and each of you has talked about many times over the past few days, which is this dangerous misinformation that is coming from a lot of corners, including your opponent in the race for the White House. Several local Republican leaders have been pleading with them to stop. Have you spoken to GOP officials in Florida to figure out how to help combat that right now as it's about to get a whole lot worse?
Well, I'll tell you, I have spoken with local officials who have been struck, for example, by Hurricane Helene, and they are doing an extraordinary job in trying to combat the misinformation. And I'm talking about sheriffs, I'm talking about mayors, I'm talking about local officials. I don't even know their party affiliation, by the way, but leaders on the ground who know that it is not in the best interest of the people living in those areas to not know their rights, not to know what they're entitled to, and to be afraid of seeking help. It is dangerous. It is unconscionable, frankly, that anyone who would consider themselves a leader would mislead desperate people to the point that those desperate people would not receive the aid to which they are entitled. And that's why I call it dangerous. And we all know it's dangerous. And the gamesmanship has to stop. At some point, the politics have to end, especially in a moment of crisis and the crises that we've been seeing affects so many people. I've met people who have lost family members through Hurricane Helene. We know the desperation and the fear that the folks who are attempting to evacuate Florida are experiencing. The last thing that they deserve is to have a so-called leader make them more afraid than they already are.
We have been fact-checking. In fact, just before you came on, we did so. My colleague Brianna Keeler, along with Daniel Dale and Priscilla Alvarez, are doing that, and we're continuing to do it. One of my sort of follow-up questions to that is about, we know what Republicans, many Republicans are saying that is just not true. One of the things that came out of the fire in Hawaii last year was that a lot of the misinformation was reportedly being stirred by foreign adversaries. Do you have any indication that that is happening right now?
I do not. No, I do not. But whatever the source, Dana, just so we're clear, it hurts the American people, and it's got to stop.
Madam Vice President, I also just want to ask a little bit more about the federal response. One of the Republican senators from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, who I should say is not critical of the federal response, he says he believes that President Biden should appoint an active duty commander to lead the federal response to these storms. Is that a good idea? Should he do that?
I mean, Dana, we're looking at we've already, as part of the briefing, heard just minutes ago that tornadoes have actually already hit the area. So now is not the time to necessarily think about restructuring as much as it is to get boots on the ground and the support directly that is needed as a matter of urgency. And certainly all good ideas are welcome. But right now, let's let FEMA, let's let the folks who are on the ground do the work they need to do right now in real time. That's about assisting with evacuations, getting correct information out, battling, sadly, the misinformation, and putting in place the resources that can hopefully mitigate against the predictable damage. Including, for example, we heard a very good briefing from the Commandant of the Coast Guard, the work that needs to happen around being concerned about potential damage to the port in Tampa. That kind of work needs to happen urgently, and that's where my focus is.
Yeah, and the window for evacuation is definitely closing as we speak. Madam Vice President, before I let you go, I do have to ask you about another phone call that I believe you participated in earlier today with President Biden, and that is with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Did he talk at all about what his plans are to retaliate against Iran after its ballistic missile attack against Israel last week?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a classified call, and I don't have any announcements to make about what happened during that call, and I just can't get into private diplomatic conversations on this channel. But it was an important call.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, spending a few moments with us. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Joined by Sarasota Police Chief Rex Troche right now. Chief, the track could still change, but it does look as though Milton could come ashore near or just south of Sarasota. Do you have a sense of how many people evacuated? And for those people who did stay in their homes, is it too late for them to go to a county shelter right now?
Yeah, so it's really hard at this point to tell how many evacuated. If I was going to base that off the traffic that I see on the street, I think a lot of people have evacuated. So that's a good thing. We're at the point now where we need to really start thinking about hunkering down, right? Staying in place, because as I sit here, I'm in a Cat 5 building and the Cat 5 window to my left is shaking. So cars out there are going to be all over the road. Right now, that window for leaving has really gotten tighter and smaller. They really need to think about sheltering in place now, Jake.
You feel safe in your area of Sarasota in that Cat 5 building?
I do feel safe in this building, but there's times when these gusts of winds, and we're just at the beginning of it, Jake. These winds are really shaking these windows really bad here on the 6th floor. So I'll get to a point where I'll have to rethink even my position, because I am on the top floor with potentially the roof coming off this building. That's the type of storm, that hurricane really, that we're looking at.
Sarasota is still, of course, in the process of rebuilding from Helene just a couple weeks ago. Are you worried that some of the structures already compromised or weakened, what might happen to them? And what could that look like if Sarasota takes a direct hit from Milton?
Yeah, we talk about the perfect storm. We didn't really talk much about Debbie. We had Debbie, then we had Helene, and now Milton. Debbie, we had a ton of rainfall. There's really nowhere for this water to go to. Then we had Helene, the structures here paid the price for it. And now we have Milton, and we're just going to have a ton of flooding along with this water surge. And these buildings are really in tough shape right now. So we're doing the best that we can to mitigate this, collaborating with our Emergency Operations Center and our different departments within the city.
Is there anything that you need from either the federal government or the state government that you did not get?
I would say, fortunately, we have a great relationship with the state government, Governor Ron DeSantis. I know they're talking with FEMA. Right now, we're getting to that point where once these winds get to 45 miles an hour, Jake, we're going to be bringing our officers off the street. If people need help, we're not going to be able to come to them with these winds the way they are. After that happens, we're going to wait till this hurricane passes, and then we're going to go into recovery mode. And recovery mode is we start opening the streets. Our tactical first-in teams go out there, make sure that all the debris is removed, the electrical lines are down or removed from the main thoroughfares, and then we're going in there and we're going to start saving lives.
I'm not sure I've ever seen this number of tornado warnings that we've seen today across the state. Have they impacted your area?
Not that I know, but I can tell you this. We always focus on the hurricanes, but we really do forget about the amount of tornadoes that are attached with that. So I'm glad that you're bringing that up to the people, because we're looking at our little apps that we have on our phones, and we're seeing where all these tornadoes are popping up, and I've never seen all that red in the past ever.
We've heard a lot from officials about misinformation, rumors, conspiracy theories, a lot of that in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. I'm wondering if that's something that you have encountered that has made your job more difficult?
I haven't seen that personally, but I can tell you this, that we're doing our best to give out information. So if people follow us, they know that they're getting the real story, the real deal. We're obviously not going to give out misinformation. We know that that can lead to tragedy. So we have great public information officers. We're constantly putting out content for that very reason, so people know to come right to the source.
Where should they go if they have working internet right now?
Yeah, so they can come to our Sarasota Police Department. They can go to our Facebook. They can go to our Instagram. And what we've been trying to do is put as much information out because we both know that a lot of these people passing out this misinformation are simply doing it for profit and not doing it because they care about the people being impacted by this hurricane.
Chief, I want to bring in your colleague, Sarasota County Commissioner Mark Smith, right now. Commissioner Smith, what else do you want people in your area to know or be aware of right now as we all await landfall?
Well, one thing to do is to be safe. You should be hunkered down right now. You shouldn't be on the road. Sarasota County's been working for several days now to get the shelters open. And so everybody should be where they need to be. We've have 5,300, over 5,300 people in shelters in the 11 locations in Sarasota County.
You're a lifelong Sarasotan, Mark. Does this storm feel different than others?
Yes. The last hurricane that really hit Sarasota was Donna in 1960. We've had hurricanes brush the coast. This is a direct hit. And so we haven't seen anything like this since I've been in Sarasota, and I've been here since 1963.
Let's check in with Michael Brennan, who is the director of the National Hurricane Center. Michael, thanks for joining us. People have grown to understand the phrase, turn around, don't drown. That's a message for don't drive through floodwaters. If you come to floodwaters, turn around. There's another phrase that refers to hurricanes that says, hide from the wind, run from the water. Explain what that means.
Yeah, that means that typically people need to evacuate away from storm surge and the risk that that poses along the coastline, but that if you can find a shelter or a sturdy home that's built and is protected from the wind, and outside of a storm surge evacuation zone or other flood prone area, you should be able to shelter in place and stay safely in that home through the duration of the event.
There have already been more than 90 tornado warnings in Florida from Hurricane Milton. This video we're going to show right now from a home security camera captures the moment that an apparent tornado blew through this house. What specific factors are making this hurricane such a prolific producer of tornadoes?
Yeah, well, there's multiple factors that come into play when you have a hurricane, but you have very strong wind field. You have changes in wind speed and direction with height, with the circulation of the hurricane and the heating of the day. We had some clear skies over portions of central and southern Florida that allowed that instability to build up, allows the thunderstorms to form, and that wind shear, the change in wind speed and direction with height, allows those thunderstorms to start rotating and produce tornadoes. And you're right, we have a tornado watch that's in effect for everywhere you see here in this dark pink until 9 p.m., likely to be extended through the overnight and into the early morning hours. Some tornado warnings ongoing here in portions of eastern and central Florida, but it's been a very prolific day for tornadoes, and we've seen reports of damage, lots of images of those tornadoes, and some of them have been quite long lasting as well, which is not typical for tornadoes associated with hurricanes that are usually a little more short-lived.
Florida's flat geography is also providing some unique challenges when it comes to lakes and rivers draining. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we see the radar with all this heavy rain already occurring across portions of especially central and northern Florida. So that's going to lead to a risk of not just flash flooding and urban flooding, which happens quickly right in the next few hours after the rain falls, but there's the potential for longer term sort of moderate to major river flooding because, again, the water doesn't drain out of Florida very quickly. The state is pretty flat. So these rivers can remain elevated for days or weeks after an event and cause this long-term flooding, especially in central and northern portions of the state.
Let's go to the mayor of St. Petersburg, Ken Welch. Mayor, we just saw our Bill Weir out on your pier just a few moments ago and those waves gusting over the edge. And Alyssa reporting that eye wall now, portions of it are already at this moment now striking the coast of Florida. So what are you expecting over these next few hours?
So we're expecting extreme winds. For us, it won't be as much as a surge event if it stays on the same track. But these are catastrophic winds that we haven't experienced in the eye of this storm. And we are thankful that we think most of the folks in our evacuation areas responded to that. We've got a high census in our shelters. And of course, a lot of folks were on our interstates and highways over the last day or so exiting. So we think people heeded the call, and now we just have to hunker down over the next several hours and get through this wind event.
And I know your emergency responders, you have to take care of them. They have to stay safe and alive. I know you've paused all emergency operations, but that's not something you do lightly.
Right.
And we talk about an eye wall starting, pieces coming on shore. We see these images to give people a sense of just how dire it is. Mayor, what do you say
Absolutely.
to anybody who has not yet evacuated? What should they do right now if they're there?
So if you haven't evacuated by now, you just need to find a safe place where you are. And try to protect yourself. For the last 2 days, we've been asking folks, if you are in those evac areas, please evacuate to a safe place. We've got plenty of shelter room, transportation, no excuse, no reason for someone to stay in an evacuation zone. We think most folks have heeded that call, and I think particularly because just 2 weeks ago, we had Hurricane Helene, and we lost 11 or 12 lives in St. Pete and Pinellas County. All in evacuation areas. So I think folks saw what happened and now understand how important it is. We don't have to lose a life if folks just follow the instructions.
No, Brian Todd was just reporting a moment ago about, in the area that he was in, that there had been a contractor that was supposed to pick up some of the major pieces of debris from Hurricane Helene, mattresses, chunks of concrete. I mean, massive stuff. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be a chunk of concrete to be a missile in a situation like you're in right now. It could be something light, but you have all of that. That contractor in that particular case actually didn't even pick that up. But even if they had, right, you were looking at months of pickup from Helene. It's all now out there. It's going to get blown
Absolutely.
around. How worried are you about that?
Well, we're concerned about it. Those will become projectiles. What we think, though, is that because most of that debris is in areas that have been evacuated, have mandatory evacuations, we shouldn't see a loss of life or injuries from that debris. those areas should be empty because they are evac areas. But again, you had 6 months of debris from Helene. We couldn't clean that up in 6 days. I think you saw that across Tampa Bay. So we did the best that we could. But if folks evacuated, we should avoid any harm from that to human beings.
All right, well, Mayor, I appreciate your time. I know it's going to be a very long and worrisome night for you. So thank you very much for being with us. And let's go back to Bradenton, where Anderson is. Anderson, what have you seen here in just these past few minutes? I mean, we literally spoke 15 minutes ago. Now you are looking truly in the dark here.
Yeah, the winds are definitely. Yeah, the winds are definitely picking up. I got to tell you, when we were talking before, I was thinking, wow, is this it? Because the winds were strong and there were whitecaps and stuff on the river, but the winds have definitely picked up just in the last 5 minutes, I would say. There's still lights on in buildings, flickering on and off. I did see what looked like a transformer going off across the water to the north, but you can it's hard to see the rain here. You can sort of see it off in the distance in some of those lights. It's really just kind of whipping horizontally. It's actually kind of painful. It's picking up a lot of, there's a lot of debris on the ground just from trees ripping off. There's not, thankfully, Erin, you were talking earlier about debris from Helene that hasn't been picked up. This community has really tried to pick up, but there's a lot of branches of trees that are just kind of whipping by right now. So that's something, obviously, as it gets dark, if the lights go out, that really becomes a hazard. I heard somebody talking earlier about, not going out on the roads. That is really something that emergency officials here are really emphasizing. It is so easy, if you are driving on a road, the lights go out, to not know where the road is, where the water is. You pull off to the side of the road and suddenly you find yourself in a ditch of water you can't get out of. Thankfully, again, we have not seen people walking around, but this wind is definitely picking up. I'm very curious to know, if this is sort of the height of it, if it's going to get much worse over the next 30 or 40 minutes, and if that eye wall does come over this community, what that will be. Obviously, generally the wind should die down once the eye wall is over us, but I'm also curious to see what's on the back end of that, if the storm then kind of picks back up again, or if it sort of has disintegrated on the far side of that eye wall. So there's a lot of questions about still what's going to happen here, but for now, we're waiting and seeing.
Yeah, I mean, and Anderson, now we can see your face a little bit now, but I can hear the roar of the wind, as it comes through, just kind of sort of picking up off your microphone, that roaring. I mean, are you, at this point, in terms of where would you describe exactly where you are? I mean, have you seen anybody, regular civilians who are still there?
No, I haven't. There's a lot of people in hotels here. There's a hotel right here, which is several stories. It's a 5-story hotel. There's a lot of families who have moved into this hotel in the upper floors. None of the lower floors, obviously, have been booked. This stuff is this is like whipping through the air all around here, because there's all these beautiful palm trees here all along the riverfront, and they are really starting to come apart in a lot of different places. You can see some of them back there. So there's people in buildings here. The folks at the hotel feel very confident about the structure itself. Obviously, the first floor, they are very concerned about storm surge. There's estimates of 6 to 9 feet of storm surge in this part. It's expected to be even higher further south, more in Sarasota. Again, remains to be seen. I don't know what it is at this point, but as I said earlier, the ground is already so wet here with that storm surge. It only just obviously makes it all the more difficult.
All right. Well, Anderson, thank you very much, and we'll keep checking in with Anderson as he sees fit.
Hey, welcome back. We're coming to you from Bradenton. We have just gotten word that Hurricane Milton, the eye, has made landfall in Siesta Key, which is some 7 miles or so south of Sarasota, which is south of where we are in that direction. Tampa is north of us, which is over there, and that's where Mayor Jane Castor is. I want to check in with her. Mayor, I'm sorry we lost contact with you before. How are you doing? How are the people of Tampa doing?
We're doing all right now. Anderson, the gusts are just kicking it outside here of the Emergency Operations Center. But we're I guess in a bad situation, a bit fortunate that we didn't have this storm on the north side of Tampa Bay. It's hit us on the south side, so that'll save us from the most severe of the storm surge. But we are getting that wind, and we're definitely getting the rain.
So that's good news. In terms of, have you seen much storm surge at this point? Is it something you still expect, or do you think that, I mean, where are we in sort of the arc of this storm in terms of Tampa?
We're definitely going to get the storm surge, but we're not going to get the 15 feet that was predicted in the onset, with that direct hit or a bit north. So the prediction now is anywhere from 6 to 9 feet. If you recall, we had 4 to 6 feet for Hurricane Helene. So expected a little bit higher than that, but they're all predictions.
And now that the eye has come ashore in Siesta Key, what are your people telling you in terms of the timeline for Tampa for this night? What should people, who are staying at home, who are in shelters, what should they be expecting over the next several hours in Tampa?
Well, hopefully they're just sheltering in place right now, because the next few hours are going to be rough here in Tampa with the wind gusts. The rain has not stopped, and the whole Tampa Bay area is already saturated. And then with the storm surge coming as well, we're looking about probably a 1 a.m., maybe 2 a.m. that hopefully Milton is set by the Tampa Bay area.
So you feel by 2 a.m. it should be much calmer?
Oh yes, we hope so. It's going to move through pretty fast, and you're in it now, and we're feeling the same thing. We're getting on the top of this storm, the north side. We're getting really pounded by the wind more so than the bottom of the hurricane, but they're getting the worst of it, which is the storm surge. So we'll take the wind part of that hurricane today.
So that would mean, if in fact that holds up, and obviously this is you can't say for sure, but if it's 2 a.m., that would mean that emergency services could go out around then.
Right. We just take it as it comes. We've got sort of that rule of thumb at about 40 miles an hour sustained winds, but our first responders are here to serve our community, and they're going to go out and do what they need to do to help our community as long as it's safe for them.